Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct. It's your boy Christian Stoinev back with another episode. And today, my brother Christopher Stoinev is joining me. And yes, it's going to be a little bit of a biased episode. We are talking Raptors and the Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood trade. And we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings a little bit. But then at the end, I'm going to ask him some questions about who he's got coming out the East, who he's got coming out the West in the NBA, and who is his NBA MVP with LeBron being out for a while and Embiid having some injuries. So we'll see. We'll get all into that. And I guess we might as well just invite Christopher on. So let's just talk to him right now. All right. Joining me now is my brother, fellow Raptors fan, fellow Vikings fan. Hey, and happy opening day in baseball, fellow Yankees fan. What's going on, Christopher? How are you?
I'm good, man. It's great to finally be like a part of the show, especially when you're talking basketball, because I'm more of a basketball fan than a football fan, so it's easier this way.
Well, good. Well, me too. Most of the time, I'm more of a basketball fan as well, so that's good. We'll definitely talk a lot of basketball stuff, and we could just start off with our beloved Raptors. So for people, you might want to skip through the first 10 minutes of this if you're not interested in the Raptors or in the Portland Trailblazers, because we're probably going to spend a good chunk talking about those two teams, since those two teams made a trade at the deadline. So the Raptors traded away Norman Powell in exchange for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. Most people think Rodney Hood is a salary filler. However, he could still be a useful veteran, but also he's got a hip injury now, so he might be out for a while. So he might just end up being a salary filler. But Christopher, what were your first thoughts when you heard about this trade?
Well, I mean, when I was in the middle of like getting ready for my segment, because I do the like news. I have my own segment on a show here, and it's called "Who's Ballin', Who's Fallen," which you used to do. So now I took up that mantle, and I was doing a trade deadline kind of thing. So like every like 15 minutes, I was updating like Adrian Wojnarowski's like Twitter, just to see what happened. And then right before I went on, I updated one more time just in case I had to update my script real quick. And Norm Powell got traded, and like I got kind of sad at first, and then I was like, "Man, this sucks!" Like right before the show, and then I just like looked at who we got, and I was like, Gary Trent Jr. Like I remember him being pretty good in the playoffs last year, and like a lot of talk about him. And then Rodney Hood, I've always liked Rodney Hood. Like when he got traded to the Cavs, like back when it was just LeBron, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's decent. Like Rodney Hood's a good player. So I was kind of excited to see like how the Raptors would do with Gary Trent and Rodney Hood and how they would use them. I always expected them to use Gary Trent as like a Norm Powell kind of thing, like a starter. Um, and like just like a scorer, 3-point shooter kind of thing. And I just was excited to see how they would use Rodney Hood. But then, of course, there's always that feeling of like, oh, we're going to miss Norm Powell. Like it's always going to happen. So it was a little like saddening, but then also a little bit of excitement to see what Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood could bring to the table.
Right. So I think in most trades, obviously there's the sad part of it and the excitement. And whatever trade it is, most of the time people are sad and seeing, whatever player leave. But then most of the time they get excited, whether it's for the player they're getting back, or sometimes it's just to justify the trade. Like I feel like if you're a Houston fan and you trade away James Harden, you're not feeling great about it, but you justify it because you're like, you know what, we got these draft picks or whatever. And you try to get yourself excited about the return. My initial reaction, to be honest, was I was thinking of it as far as the basketball side of it, and I was happy. I was like, this is a great trade. I thought it was awesome because Norm, he's been playing great this year, but he's due, some big money in the offseason that, to be honest, I hope in a way, if you're thinking about the guy individually, wouldn't stay with the Raps because he could be making so much better money if he signs with a team that has cap space and would, empty out the bank for him. So had he stayed with the Raptors, he would have had to stay for a significant discount, or it would have cost the Raptors a chance to keep some guys and it would have hurt the salary cap. So initially I was like, good trade, because as far as value and just the business side of things. And now I don't know if you read the piece that he put out, a Players Tribune piece, and it's all like emotional. And for people that aren't Raptors fans and are watching this and don't understand, like, all the championship year for the Raptor fans was super special because we had so many years of crappy teams, then so many years of getting so close, and then finally breaking through. And so it was just all that being rewarded. And, the championship wasn't just that one year. It felt like it was like all those years of DeMar DeRozan and all those guys that were part of the team. And Norm was one of those guys. So Norm's rookie year, he played, he made a big impact in the playoffs for us, and we watched him grow. So I feel like the emotional side of it is the part that for Raptor fans was saddening. Whereas like Houston, I don't know if it's the emotional side that people are sad about, because by the end of his, when James Harden's leaving the Rockets, you're just kind of thinking like, all right, well, this guy doesn't want to play here. Like, he doesn't even want to like be on this team. Like, let's get rid of him. With him, it's more like the numbers that you're going to miss more than the emotional side, because you're like, dang, he's a superstar. With Norm, I think for Raptor fans, it was more of like, man, like that's a connection. He was like another piece of that championship team that was there through the tough times. And that's the tough part in the business. But I mean, I love the trade. If I'm breaking the trade down, Norm, I think Raptor fans, if I'm being fully honest, tend to hang on to that emotional side more. Like with guys like DeMar, when we traded him for Kawhi, it was really tough because of the emotional side. But when you think about the business side of it, it's a no-brainer. Like, you're obviously going to trade DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard anytime, any day. But, like DeMar's my favorite player. Like, there's an emotional side to it, because even when you look at the numbers with Norman Powell, this season he's having a great year, but I mean, he was a second round pick. That's why it's a good story. But this guy, he wasn't putting up big numbers. I have the stats. His rookie year, he put up 5.6 points a game. Then it was 8.4 points a game. His third year in the league, he was putting up 5.5 points a game, then 8.6. So really, it wasn't until last year that he averaged 16. And obviously, last year is the year that, they didn't really go too far in the playoffs. It was a semifinals round, and they lost to the Celtics. And then this year he's putting up more numbers, but the team is worse. And so that's how I feel about the trade. And now you get Gary Trent Jr. Essentially, he's averaging 15 points a game this whole season, and Norm didn't average that until his fifth year in the league. So to me, it's a huge win. And I really like Gary Trent Jr., and you're going to get to keep him around at a cheaper price. And when it is time to pay him, he might be more worth paying that money than the money Norm was going to get.
I mean, like, of course, like, seeing like Norm, like he's older, like, and we're getting back a player that's really like almost averaging similar numbers, and he's a lot younger and a lot cheaper. I think the only thing that really makes this worse is that Norm like had said like the night before that like he wants to stay a Raptor and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden he's like gone, and then you kind of feel worse for him. And then he told the story of like he got the phone call from his agent saying that that nothing was happening, there's no trade happening, and then like 30 seconds later, like he gets another phone call saying he was just traded. Um, but yeah, I do like that you pointed out that Raptors fans like usually feel like, I don't know, like we get more emotional towards that stuff. Like when the Lakers traded for Anthony Davis, like I remember everyone was like, "Yeah, get them out of there! Like, come on, we need Anthony Davis." Like, there was no remorse to trading all those like assets. There's no
Like
remorse.
Lonzo or Ingram or any of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like when we traded DeMar, I was crying. I remember exactly where I was when it happened, and I was like crying, even though we were getting back
Yeah, I was
Kawhi
pretty
Leonard.
sad too.
And then like the next year, like we're like super like we're cheering on this guy that we were sad about getting, but also excited about getting. And then when he left, it was like everyone was like heartbroken. So it was kind of like even like players that come in for like 1 year will always feel something like when they leave.
Well, and this is the thing. I feel like sometimes you got to be realistic and understand that these guys, as much as they love the city and they love Toronto, like, you know, it's a business, it's a work for them. So I mean, Norm could have said whatever he said and that he wanted to stay a Raptor, but when he's getting a $25 million a year contract by the whether it's the Knicks or whoever is offering him that deal, or the Pistons, and then the Raptors are offering him all they can, but it's 18 mil a year, and you can't blame him. I feel like it's very rare to see the player take the less money and the lesser deal. So he says that now, but in reality, just doesn't work that way. It's a job, it's a business, and that's where the older I've gotten too, I kind of understand that side of it a little bit more, and you kind of disconnect a little bit the emotions. Like Fred and all these guys. Like Fred got paid, and that's why, to me, the DeMar situation was tough, because technically he did take less money, but even still, he got an extra year, because he was a Raptor. So they were able to offer him that, and they had his bird right. So in all these situations, is you just got to remind yourself, like, hey, it's a business, and the Raptors are going to have to pay Gary Trent still, but it's just like, there's a difference there. So I mean, being that we are Raptor fans, why don't we take a moment to say thank you to Norm and give him his respect. And I told you to pick your top 3 moments, games, whatever you want to pick, of Norman Powell. So why don't you go ahead and start with your number 3?
I mean, my number 3, I had to look up because I couldn't remember exactly who the dunk was on, but it was in Milwaukee, Game 5 back in like 2017, where he had 2 big dunks in that game. He had the one over Thon Maker, and then he had like the dunk towards the end of the game that was just like a breakaway dunk, but it was his, like, the iconic like Superman dunk.
Be real sturdy and sound with the Stoinev Norman to the rim over Thon Maker. Norman Powell with the exclamation point. 25 major.
That's probably my like number 3, just because I remember watching that game. And then the dunk over Thon Maker, I was like going insane, even though it was in like the first 4 minutes of the game.
Okay, so that's your number 3. I feel like a couple of these of ours are gonna probably like intertwine in there, because
they're probably the same.
I mean, for me, it was hard to find specific moments, because I think, his dunks were he has a lot of like the same dunks, it's either the 2-foot, like 1-footer, the Superman type dunk that he does. But for me, my number 3 was just, shouting out the fact that this season, Freddie gets his career high, and then a couple games later, it's Norm's turn, and he puts up 43 points, and that's his career high. And he does it this year, in a year where the Raptors are really pretty much horrible. And so it was nice to have that at least. And, they almost lost that game, I feel like, too. But I'm just going to shout out his 43 career high for Norm. I thought that was nice in a season like this for the Raptors. It was nice to have that. And for a player, like I said, that has some kind of history with the team, it was nice to see him get his career high, and, his teammates to be all around him. So that was my number 3 for Norman Powell. I just picked that game. What about number 2?
Literally all of mine are like his like dunks, because like that's like what I remember the most. Like every time I picture Norman Powell, it's always like either a poster or the Superman dunk, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, okay. What's your number 2 then? What's your dunk for number 2?
My number 2 is his poster on Anthony Davis when he was back still on the Pelicans. He just drives to the lane, and then I think Anthony Davis had won like Defensive Player of the Year either that year or the year before, and then he was like all NBA, like all NBA defense, first team, and then like all of a sudden he's like posterizing him, and I just remember being like, was that on Anthony Davis? And then having to like look at, like, rewatch the video later to make sure it was on Anthony Davis.
Norman Powell over Anthony Davis.
It was just so exciting. That one was so exciting. Because he
Well,
was like averaging like 3 blocks a game or something like that. And then I was like on a shot blocker. When you posterize a shot blocker, it's pretty exciting.
for sure. So, I mean, well, yeah, that's good though that you pick more of the dunks. I kind of picked more of the games and the the impact that he had in some of these. So my number 2 is actually Game 5, and later when we get to number 1, he's kind of became known as Game 5 Norm in a way, because he always would kind of come through in Game 5. And it was in that series against, well, really, I should just highlight that series, because it was the series against Milwaukee in the en route to the finals. And really, Game 3 is what I meant to say. Sorry, Game 3, because the Raptors were down 2-0. They looked like it was over. They come through after the series where the Kawhi bounce and beats Philadelphia in 7 games. The city's vibing. They're super hyped up. Game 1 in Milwaukee, they were close. They should have won. They drop it. Game 2, they get smacked. So coming back home for Game 3, the vibe was kind of like, this is it right here, And that game goes into like double overtime. It's the one where Lowry fouls out. Kawhi's like hobbling with his knee. And Norm came through. He had 19 points in that game. And really, the Raptors desperately needed somebody else to come through. And again, with Lowry fouling out, and Norm put up some numbers in that game and kind of saved the team. And that whole series right there, it just changed. And Norm, I feel like in that championship run, it started establishing himself as an important role player right there, because really, Game 3, Game 4, then the Raptors go on the road and they win in Game 5. And Norm was kind of an important part. He was guarding, whether it was Middleton or Giannis sometimes, and he stepped up. And like I said, at that point, it's just like you kind of expected him to step up. And so I just, when I'm talking moments, I'm talking like, and at the time, you don't realize it, but now it's like, man, if we could go back to that 1 week, like Norm was crucial to those like 3 games played within that week in that Milwaukee series. And had he not had the game he had in Game 3, like I said, that was like, man, like had they lost that game, like I don't think they win the title.
No.
And it was just such a crazy game, man. I would like, that's a game to rewatch when it goes into double overtime and everything. And so that was huge. And then, and I guess we'll lead the way to number 1, which I have a feeling we're probably going to agree on.
Yeah. I mean, Pacers 2016, the steal and the Superman dunk to tie up the game.
So I'm wearing this shirt on purpose because this was the year of this playoff run. Like I said, for Raptors fans, the championship was like a long time coming. So we'll set this up. We're going to play this clip and with sound on and everything, because, the Raptors, it's Game 5. They're playing the Pacers at home. The Raptors that season were the number 2 seed. The Pacers were the 7th seed. And really, the Pacers at this point were, in control of this game. I think they were up by like around 20 at some point. I remember watching this game and just kind of being like, man, like they're getting smacked like this at home in a must-win game. Then the game is, I believe it was like 90-77 or something. So it was like, 90-77 Pacers in the 4th quarter. They're down 13 and the Raptors go on a 13-2 run. So it's 92-90. T-Ross had just hit a 3. I remember it was a 5-point game. T-Ross hits a 3 in the corner, and now it's a 2-point game. And then this happens.
92-90, 13-2 run in the ACC is alive. Norman Powell, the rookie, with the steal. We are tied. 92-92. Take it to the rim, Norman Powell.
And so obviously, I mean, I get chills just rewatching that, because as a Raptor fan, that was such a moment. And being a Raptor fan, they do this all the time. They'll come back, they'll tie the game or take the lead, and then they'll lose the game. And it sucks. And it just tears your heart out. But this one, they hung on. They won the game. Then they lost in Indiana in Game 6 and ended up winning that series in Game 7. And it was the first time ever the Raptors had won a 7-game series
back
in
when
their franchise history. And then they went on to play the Heat. And same thing, they won in 7. I remember watching that Game 7 with you, actually, at the house in Illinois. And we were all so excited. And then they went on to get, to lose to LeBron. But that was the one year they actually didn't get swept by LeBron. And they actually lost 4-2 in that series. But that moment, is that moment is Norm Powell's moment as a Raptor. So
Yeah, this is back when
that's
Raptors.
definitely meaningful for him.
This is back when Raptors could only win in 7 games. Like that's like what like for years we only won in 7 games. And then I think it was the year before Kawhi came that we finally won like a game in 6 or series in 6 games. And yeah, I feel like that dunk was like what pretty much like set us like on this track. Like not the dunk, but like that whole series, and then just to have that dunk as like a highlight of that series. Uh it's literally one of the most fun clips to look back on is that dunk.
Yeah, I mean, it was a first round series. Also, sometimes your audio you start sounding like Darth Vader over here. So I don't know. We'll see how that sounds later. But it's only like for like 10 seconds, so we'll play it. We'll just battle through it. But the that was a first round series, and like you said, as Rap fans, it got frustrating. Like you'll see like other teams at the time were like, LeBron was like sweeping everyone, and they're done in 4 games, and the Raptors can't even close out the 7th seed in 6 games. It takes them 7 games, and it just was like, man. And I think eventually they were beat. Like I remember because I went to the game 6 in Milwaukee. I think it was like the next year, and DeRozan had like a dunk, and that closed out that series in the first round. But the first round series for the Raptors were never sweeps, and still to this day, I mean, they with Orlando, the first sweep they just had, it was in the bubble, because even in the championship run to Orlando, they dropped game 1 and they won 4 games to 1. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're good with Raps talk. Norm, good luck in Portland. I'm very excited about the Raps getting Gary Trent Jr. Like I said, I think even, I know it's only 3 games that Norm has been in Portland, but his scoring has dropped. He's been averaging 16.3 points per game in Portland, and Gary Trent was averaging 15. So they're like essentially playing the same kind of ball. That's why I love the trade for the Raptors. And I mean, if you're Portland, I guess you want a guy with experience, but I don't know. I always watching them. Gary Trent, I feel like always hit big shots for them. Obviously, he was getting good looks because of Dame and CJ, but I just didn't know. I always thought he was older too, so I didn't know where he came from. But it's nice that he's young and got a future. But all right, so let's just talk a little bit about the Vikings for a second. Have you seen what they've been doing this offseason, and how do you feel about that?
The biggest move that I saw was the Patrick Peterson one, for the 1-year deal for Patrick Peterson. And for some reason, I just like looked at that and was like, what is going on in their heads? Like I get they want a veteran like cornerback with all the young guys that we have, but like he's like older now. Like if I remember right, like last season wasn't his best season. He's basically just gonna come in to like help teach the younger cornerbacks. And then from there, like when they dropped why can't I remember who they dropped? One of the defense
last year?
No, like this year they released a player, but I can't remember his name.
Riley Reef.
Yeah, and then I don't know. It just looks like they're like getting ready for the draft to like draft an offensive lineman or something.
Yeah, well, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I don't know. It's just like a lot of things I like question, and then other things I'm like, okay, like that makes sort of sense. But I don't know. I don't go one way or the other with the Vikings off season right now. It's like some things are like I get, and some things I'm like, what are you thinking? So that's just me.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can go ahead and say your thoughts,
Well, all right. So, I'll help you here. This is the thing. To me, they've had an awesome offseason. Yes, they're gonna draft a lineman in the draft, guaranteed, or a defensive end for sure. They need offensive line. That's the one thing they're missing. Patrick Peterson, Kyle told me this last time when I had him on. He's only 30 years old.
Yeah, but feels
he's
like
not that old.
Older.
Huh?
He seems so much older than that. Like, I don't know why.
He seems so much older, but also, whether he was older, let's say he was 35, I think that's exactly what this team needed. They remember when they had Terrence Newman, they need that kind of veteran corner to help these young guys, because last year they had all rookies out there getting burned every single time. So to me, that was the best acquisition they have made this offseason, bringing him in. They also brought back Mackenzie Alexander, who they drafted years ago. He left and now he came back. They also got Xavier Woods to come in and replace Anthony Harris. So even if there's a drop off at safety, to me, Patrick Peterson's going to be huge for them. They need that. They need that corner that, for it, first of all, if the rookie's not playing well, they can put a veteran in there that's respected around the league, that's still going to produce, maybe not at his prime, but is going to produce. I mean, the Vikings corners last year had 3 interceptions, all of them combined. Patrick Peterson by himself had 3 interceptions last year. So they need that. And like I said, aside from that, I mean, I think they've addressed, the defensive tackle, the Anthony Barr's coming back, the injuries from last year, Daniel Hunter's coming back. So I think they're set. And I think they need offensive line right now. All they need that's the one thing where I haven't understood what they're doing, because they let go of Riley Reif and then they re-signed Dakota Dozier, who was one of the worst linemen last year. So if they address that in the draft and bring in one more veteran offensive lineman, I mean, obviously they need a kicker, but they're right there. And I think that they're going to be really good next year. All right. And now I'm just going to ask you some questions real quick before we leave and just go. So they're going to be surprise questions that I'm asking you. All right. So first question is, who is your favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference this year? Go.
Philly. I think Philly's going to win it, just because I think the Nets don't have a defense. And, well, if Philly's healthy, I think it's going to be Philly. I just think they have, overall, they have defense and offense, which the Nets don't have right now.
All right. My heart wants to say Philly as well, because I believe in defense and I believe in just chemistry and guys that have played together and trust each other. But seeing the way the NBA works, I just feel like it's just like whoever has the most superstars ends up winning anyway at the end. So it's hard not to pick Brooklyn, but I hope it is Philly, because I don't want to see Brooklyn. I'm already tired of them just because of all their crazy antics. Who do you have coming out of the West?
Out of the West, if they're healthy, I still think it'll be the Lakers. I mean, Drummond just got hurt, but I think that was a really good addition because Marc Gasol was just not producing.
Okay, fair enough. This is the year where I'm actually going to take that wild card team. I think this could be the year that it's either Denver or Utah that actually does it, because like you said, it's if the Lakers are healthy. I think they have a lot of injuries. They just got Andre Drummond and he just got hurt. And I think that, LeBron, I mean, his injuries, they're fluky injuries, don't get me wrong. And I still think he's still great and going to be great for a while, but they're starting to add up. I do think there could be a blessing in disguise, however, that he got injured now, that Anthony Davis got injured. I think they'll be fresh. But I think the depth of these other squads could be enough to compete. And at that point, the Lakers just have such a small margin of error. If LeBron, whether it's COVID or gets hurt or any little thing like that, it has such an impact on that team. The Clippers, I cannot take for real at all. And, Phoenix is another team that I'm looking at. But I just think that, same thing. They just haven't been together as long. I think the acquisition of Aaron Gordon for Denver is huge. So, I like the way Denver's being set up. All right, last couple here. Who do you have as your NBA MVP?
Wait, before we move on, did you hear why Aaron Gordon changed his number to 50?
Yeah, he needs to get over it. I mean, it's kind of funny. It is, because he changed his number to 50. It's for funny, the slam dunk contest that he should have gotten 50s for, which I tend to agree. But I mean, hey, it's time to chase the championship, buddy. You're on a contending team. The Nuggets could do it. I honestly believe that. I think so. So who's your MVP?
MVP is a little bit harder for me. But I thought it would be Embiid, but he's been hurt a lot. So now I think I'm rolling with Jokic. I think it's going to be a center this year, like either Jokic or Embiid. If Embiid comes back and plays phenomenal. But
Okay, so see, I tend to agree with you. I think the Embiid injury hurt him a lot. I think LeBron getting hurt and gonna miss another definitely probably 2-3 weeks is gonna hurt him a lot for his MVP. And so I think it's Jokic, but I believe in Luka. The Mavs have been playing really good ball lately. I think Luka, I mean, he's putting up the numbers, and if the Mavs can sneak up those standings, he's like the attractive pick. You know, in the beginning, everyone was like, this could be the year that Luka does it. And I do think this could be the year that Luka does it. They started rough, and he is that glue to that team. If he stays healthy and the Mavs keep playing like they're playing and they can move up to a top 4 seed in the West, watch out for Luka. All right. Last one, I'm going to give you an NFL question. Do you think the Buccaneers will repeat? They brought everybody back this offseason.
I know they brought everyone back, but I feel like I'd rather take the field than just one team because it's hard to repeat. I mean, it's proof with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs that it's really difficult to repeat. But you never know. Tom Brady, you never know with Tom Brady what they might do. But I'm going to take the field on this one. I'm just going to take all the other teams over the Buccaneers.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Did you see, by the way, that the NFL is now going to have 17 games?
I did. And
I'm just curious as to how that's going to work with home games and away games. But, you know, because obviously before it was 16, so it was 8 and 8. So I don't know how the NFL is doing this. It should have gone to 18 games and 2 preseason games or something, but we'll see. I don't know how they're doing it.
I just think you're risking like players' injury by just adding one more week, but at the same time, like the NFL wants to make more and more money. So,
yep.
But
so do the players. That's why, like, when people get on the leagues and they're like, well, all they care about is money, that players want to make more money too. And this is a chance for them to make more money also.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm kind of like, just why, but I know why. But it's just something that wasn't necessarily needed, but it's here. So,
I mean, I love it because for me, I'm like, we have another week of fun football and a week less of being teased and having to watch the starters play for one possession and then watch bench guys pretty much try out. So, you know, I'm like, yes, another week of meaningful football. I'm in for it. Last year with them, the playoffs, the way they did it and expanding it, I love it. So obviously everything has its limits. I don't think that they should go further and like letting more teams into the playoffs. I like how it is set now. I think it's good. I think it's fair. So with just one bye week in the playoffs for one team, I mean, so I like that. So anyway, we'll wrap it up now. I like to keep these around a half hour, but we can just do this again next week. I'm sure there'll be more headlines. Baseball starting up. Go Yankees for me. I'm a Yankee fan. So we will and I saw that there were fans in the stands for baseball and it was nice. I was like, all right, we're working our way back. So all right, Christopher, thank you for joining me, and we will do this again soon.
Yeah, we will. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to watch it and watch the Norman Powell dunk again.
Yeah, hell yeah, I can't wait. So Norman Powell, it's like a little tribute video. I can't wait to rewatch it too. I want to see that dunk again. So all right, take care. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. You too.
All right, well, shout out to my brother Christopher. Thank you for joining me. That was a lot of fun. Again, if you're not a Raptor fan or a Viking fan, I'm sorry. If you stuck through it, thank you for watching. But I promise, next time we have him on, we will talk about other stuff and other teams and other things going around the league. And there's a lot going on that I want to get to also. So I'll be back soon with another episode in the next couple of days. And I'll try to keep having guests on. And if you have any suggestions, who you think should join me, let me know. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.